You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and a happy Thursday to all of you and yours. Good evening, Jamie Allman here. The Allman Report, 101.9 and 94.1 NewsTalkSTL. So I guess in the end, Matt Gaetz might just be the next senator from Florida. If DeSantis decides he's going to appoint him to fill the Senate seat vacated by Marco Rubio, who is going to be the next Secretary of State, I guess Gaetz will be the next senator. I still don't understand the machinations behind all of this, and I'm going to have Tim Jones in just a little later on to kind of go through what has been going on and behind the scenes. And Tim had a theory that this was planned all along, and I want to ask him a little bit more about that. I just can't, it just doesn't seem like it's a possibility that President Trump would do such a thing. I do know that something happened that ultimately forced the withdrawal of Matt Gaetz, and this was an underhanded type of leaking network that ultimately put some stuff out there that was not going to be otherwise exposed. Because, of course, we know that the House Ethics Committee announced it would not release the files from the federal sex trafficking investigation. The files, by the way, that resulted in no charges whatsoever and no charges from Merrick Garland, who is the Biden administration attorney general. But that didn't stop someone from the Department of Justice from leaking 2 hours later, 2 hours after the House Ethics Committee said, we're not going to release this. And it seemed like at that point it was going to be smooth sailing for Matt Gaetz. But what happened is the Justice Department, somebody within the Justice Department, or somebody who had access to the Justice Department's probe and the files, went ahead and leaked some of the files to the New York Times anyway, 2 hours after the announcement was made by the House Ethics Committee. And the New York Times said, we obtained a document from the federal sex trafficking investigation of Gaetz. And by the way, I don't know how this can be legal to release working documents from an investigation, a federal investigation. It doesn't seem like that would be legal to me. I realize we've been through that with the Pentagon Papers and Daniel Ellsberg, which also involved, by the way, the New York Times. But I can't see how that is legal to leak these documents. Anyway, the New York Times saying, we obtained a document from the federal sex trafficking investigation of Gaetz. It shows he made thousands in payments to women who told investigators they had sex with him for money. We are publishing a redacted version of the document, and basically what they were claiming is that Gaetz was indeed involved in sex trafficking and was paying these women for sex. Now, of course, as I said before, Venmo payments or whatever to certain people would not be proof of anything other than you made a Venmo payment to them. And when you make Venmo payments or what have you, usually you have to put, the purpose of it, and they put all these little, gas, rent, pizza, that kind of thing. But the payments apparently were made, and to the tune of thousands of dollars to women who told investigators they had sex with him. Now, keep in mind, this during the time that this whole thing became a thing, Matt Gaetz was saying, I wasn't paying them. I was just simply interacting with them, and some of them were doing work for me or whatever. So I don't know. Either way, it became apparently too messy. And I have to tell you, when I look back at yesterday, when I played the soundbite from Lindsey Graham saying, oh, yeah, I met with Vance and Gates and everything's going to be cool. It was so surprising to me that Lindsey Graham said that. And I guess in hindsight, again, not to impugn Lindsey Graham particularly, but it seemed to me Lindsey Graham might have known at that time that this document was going to be leaked and it would force the withdrawal of Gates. And Lindsey Graham then could be on the record as being kind of the good guy who supported Gates all along and kept his loyalist cred to Trump. So, that's kind of a long way to go. I realize it's almost a conspiracy theory, but it was so unusual. Don't you think, people? Like when I told you yesterday, Lindsey Graham said he was full on Gates, you were probably like, really? Like, what's going on? And it turns out, I believe, now I know what was going on. And that is that Lindsey Graham knew Gates would be forced to withdraw eventually. And he could still be the guy who said, I was with Gates all along, so sorry about that. He just withdrew, but I'm still loyal to Trump. And I think that those calculations were made because it was way too unusual for Lindsey Graham to be so, wow, this is incredible. I mean, to be like that in that case, to have been so magnanimous. It's like that wasn't in Lindsey Graham's character to be that way. So now I think we know why. So that was so those two little things were dramatic. And I believe that, even though the House committee said we're not going to release these documents, people in the Justice Department released them anyway, which doesn't seem to me to be ethical or legal. But that must have been what ultimately was the shoe dropping that led Gates to withdraw, because it was at that point it was already out there and there wasn't any information that was protected. And again, keep in mind, Gates was exonerated for any involvement in sex trafficking in spite of the fact that the DOJ had that document. So the DOJ had that document about the thousands in payments, but they still did not prosecute him. So they must have concluded that those payments or whatever didn't constitute sex trafficking or anything. But apparently not satisfied with the fact that Gates was going to see possibly a sailing through at this point, they decided they were going to release it anyway and sabotage that, even though the Department of Justice did, in fact, exonerate Matt Gates, but then release this document anyway. That, in my opinion, led to his withdrawal. So lots of games being played, and it doesn't seem at all to be a fair way to mete out justice. But again, even if the Justice Department didn't file charges, it doesn't matter because this stuff would be out and at the hearing level, and whether or not Gates was guilty, they were going to make him guilty one way or the other through the hearing process. At that point, and then maybe call up some of these women, what have you, and then the whole can of worms is open again. But it just seems to me to be, well, and Gates isn't Jesse Smollett, right? Who can just have his whole everything vacated and vindicated. And it just is a bad situation. It doesn't seem right to me. President Trump asked whether he was reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gates. He's like,
Mr. President, are you reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gates?
No, I'm not. And honestly, we don't know who ultimately Trump will choose as a replacement. There are people who are wandering around thinking Trey Gowdy should be the nominee. Trey Gowdy is a rhino. Trey Gowdy was one of those attacking Matt Gates. Trey Gowdy had to be corrected by Molly Hemingway with the Federalist. Trey Gowdy is not the guy, and I hope President Trump isn't being advised to choose him. So we'll see. I'll talk to Tim Jones about that and find out exactly what's happening there. In the meantime, we have the other situation, and that is with Pete Hegseth, and they're trying to nail him at this point too. And Pete Hegseth is not going to withdraw, I don't think. And Hegseth decided that he was going to ultimately respond to these new allegations. These were sexual assault allegations already investigated by police. They found no evidence whatsoever. And he's responding for the first time to this sexual assault claim. And, I don't know. I didn't think Gates would get out, but who knows with this one.
Absolutely nothing for granted, and we welcome the opportunity to talk to any senator that wants to talk to us.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. The matter was fully investigated, and I was cleared. And so what's going to happen next with Pete Hegseth? Even though he was fully investigated and cleared, just like Matt Gaetz was fully investigated and cleared by the Department of Justice, are they still just going to go ahead and leak these documents and conduct this extrajudicial attack on Pete Hegseth just like they did with Matt Gaetz? And at some point, to me, in America, fair-minded Americans know this isn't right. When you have a situation where somebody is investigated, they're exonerated, but then the working materials from the investigation are released anyway and then used as some kind of indication of guilt. That's not justice in America. That's not fair in America. But the media will stop at nothing. And they won't care about the conclusions of the investigation. As long as they have the materials from it, they can conduct their own investigation and their own trial. And they'll make their own judgments about guilt. That's what the media will do. That's what the enemies of Trump will do. Regardless of this, and especially when President Trump begins his administration, you will also see a bunch of documents released from these lawfare cases that will then be used by the media so they draw their own conclusion about President Trump's guilt or innocence in spite of the fact that charges were dropped, cases were dropped, what have you. And Americans don't tolerate this kind of parallel universe of justice, a universe where justice is meted out by the authorities, the justice authorities, and then another universe where justice is meted out by enemies of Trump and by the news media. That's an intolerable world for us to live in, and it's going to be the way they're going to be dealing with President Trump from here until the end of his term. And that just is absolutely unfair. Americans hate it. And again, their view of President Trump doesn't change one way or the other because of Matt Gaetz's withdrawal. But it's a shame that that's how our country is operating right now. One system of justice arbitrated by the justice authorities and another system of justice arbitrated by Trump enemies and the news media. Not a situation that is tenable for the millions of Americans who voted for President Trump, voted for his policy, gave him the mandate, but they're not going to tolerate it. This is their way of not accepting the results of the election. And that just burns our blood, as I know that you know. So I'll talk to Tim Jones on that. On the other side of this, I want to let you all know that I really, truly appreciate Grasser Electric and all that they have done for this show, for free, common sense, conservative radio. Shane Grasser is a good friend of mine and a great guy. And Shane and his electricians are amazing, whether it be residential or commercial. No job is too big or too small. And Grasser Electric, a longtime supporter of free, common sense, conservative radio, I hope is your go-to for all of your electrical needs. I always tell these folks who sponsor the show, I said, I have a very loyal audience. I have a lot of people who love the show and who appreciate the show and who appreciate the common sense. And more than anything else, they also appreciate the fact that you sponsor it. And so they make a list of the people who sponsor the Allman Report. And when they need electrical service, they're going to call Grasser Electric right off the bat at the top of the list. And thank you all for doing that. GrasserElectric.com. That's GrasserElectric.com. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Ladies and gentlemen, man, this howling wind. Were you aware of all that last night and today?
I heard a little bit of it.
It was like, really, what's going on out there?
I got a drafty house anyway, so I'm used to it.
And then you'll hear it even coming through the little drafty parts of your house. It's getting to be winter, and I'm thinking, I'm starting to plot when I'm going to put all my Christmas decorations out. Probably should have done it earlier. A lot of people did right after the election. They're like, well, it's Happy Christmas. I'm going to go ahead and put my Christmas decorations out. I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to do that because I have an exhaustive display, as you all know, but I just have to pick a time when it's about above 60 or something. I have done the Christmas decorations in the freezing cold. It's not pleasant. And we always have some time in late November or December. I mean, even Thanksgiving sometimes can be like 70 degrees. And I'll put them up then. So I'm just looking for that window. But that window is not this week. I will tell you that. Oh, speaking of Christmas, apparently Joy Behar is not enjoying the season, the holiday season.
What's Trumpism. We lost the election. Wait a minute. We lost the election. We're miserable. Half of this country is miserable. And let's just tell the truth. We hate that he won. We hate it. And everybody's uptight and crazy right now.
Yeah, no, not everybody's uptight and crazy right now, Joy. We're really actually very, very happy. We're having a great holiday season. And I love the fact that she and all of her people are miserable. And, I don't like people who to be unhappy. I want everybody to be happy. I don't enjoy watching people cry. I want everybody to not cry. But the people who called me a Nazi and garbage and a fascist and racist and misogynist and all that kind of stuff because I supported Trump, screw you. I hope you have a miserable holiday season. I wish you all the blessings of Christmas and the joy of the season, celebrating the birth of Christ. I believe that you should do that. But you can imagine how sick that is, that just because you lost the election, you can't save room or have room to celebrate the birth of Christ. Now, that makes you a pretty bad person because Christ comes after your politics, and that shouldn't be the case in any way, shape, or form. Oh, and speaking of awful, do you see the Medal of Freedom going to the former director of Planned Parenthood? Let us count the ways how wrong and sick that is, that a woman who directed an outfit that encourages the abortion of babies gets the Medal of Freedom. And if you can imagine all the babies out there who will never see freedom because they were killed at the encouragement of Planned Parenthood, it just is a sick thing all around. You see that? I was telling some people about that today. They're like, you're kidding me, right? I don't know. No. The leader of an outfit that has denied life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to so many unborn babies gets the Medal of Freedom. Now, you've hit rock bottom. So we've got the Biden administration just basically conducting themselves in the most awful way. First, we have the Biden administration and all the other traitors in it trying to foment World War III and encourage it and encourage more war and not less between Ukraine and Russia, doing so solely to prop up and keep up the military-industrial complex and the greed associated with all of that. That's pretty dark and pretty down, wouldn't you say? And then you turn around after fomenting and encouraging and poking a stick at the possibility of World War III. That same week, you decide you're going to give the Medal of Freedom to an abortionist. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Some people are absolutely having a little fun, though. Nancy Mace is having the time of her life, it seems, after she talked about introducing that bill that would bar the transgendered individuals at the Capitol, in this case, Sarah McBride, who's the incoming congressperson, and from using the female bathroom. And, of course, she's getting all kinds of crap from everybody. The transgender people are going nuts. And Ocasio-Cortez is, too, as she says she's planning to fight all of this. Well, guess what? Nancy Mace had this to say about Ocasio-Cortez, which I thought was great.
I love living rent-free in AOC's tiny little brain. I mean, I never said anything like that. In fact, the irony here is that she's a radical leftist, insane clown that, I'm a rape victim. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man. And it's so weird and dangerous and perverted, this idea that it's okay for a naked man to be in a locker room with women. It's insanity to me, and this has got to stop. And so in a world of this kind of insane ideology that AOC embraces, I aim to be a giant, and I plan to stop anybody, male or female, that's going to put women and girls in harm's way. I'm not going to tolerate it.
Yeah. Nancy Mace, pretty relentless on Ocasio-Cortez, not only referencing her tiny little brain, but also calling her a clown. So Nancy Mace is pretty tough. I'm really liking her attitude of late, aren't you? Kind of makes you happy, doesn't it, to have somebody out there like that who's taking no crap from anybody. It's fabulous. All right, coming up, going to double back on the Matt Gaetz withdrawal with our little legal poobah. I'm not calling him little, but you know what I mean. Our legal poobah, Tim Jones, who is co-host of the Tim Jones and Christopher Arp show. I want to let you know, that blustery wind that we've been having last night and today. I saw some of the Hanson's tree trucks on the road because they're out and about now because, of course, with the wind, you're seeing the trees that were otherwise compromised now suddenly shedding their branches, some of them even just coming down. So this is a dangerous time, especially with the blustery fall, to have a tree that is compromised. And so oftentimes you need deadwooding and pruning done so that some of these gigantic branches, and some of them, the trees are alive, but there might be a dead branch here or there or something like that, and they're heavy. They'll kill you. They'll destroy your property, and you don't want that happening. I certainly don't want coming down on one of my plastic lighted Santas. It'll ruin the plastic lighted Santa. So here's the deal. Hanson's Tree Service, deadwooding and pruning, awesome. Hanson's Tree Service also will take a tree out for you, lickety-splickety. And Chad has introduced this really great thing for you, and that is financing, because it is expensive to take a tree down. Hanson's Tree Service is less expensive than the others, but it is expensive. And Chad said, you know what I'm going to do? I don't want people to decide not to take a tree down because they feel they can't afford it. So with financing, you have the freedom to go ahead and say, I'm going to get that tree taken down, and I'll pay for it in a gradual fashion and protect my family and my property. I can't make a decision that would endanger my family or my property just because I just don't have the money. Chad doesn't want you to do that. He is a great guy carrying on the great tradition of his late, great dad, Jeff. So for everything you do, tree and yard beyond, Hanson's Tree Service is the way to go. Free common sense radio is what they support. The Allman Report, hansonstree.com. That's hansonstree.com.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday evening to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. Jamie Allman here, and right over there, my good friend Tim Jones.
I feel like I should do the Trump dance to this music.
I know, yeah. The Tim Jones and Christopher Arp Show every weekday here on NewsTalkSTL from 4 to 6. Great show. And so the minute this thing came down with Matt Gaetz, I got to talk to Tim about this, got to figure it out, because I know you had some theories before about his appointment to begin with. One thing I did talk about that I want to get your reaction to is this parallel track of justice in America. So we had an investigation of Matt Gaetz for sex trafficking at the House Ethics Committee level as well as the DOJ level. He was exonerated by the DOJ. They
Amazingly.
did not press charges. Yes, Merrick Garland, Biden's AG, did not press charges.
So they filed charges against Trump for breathing the wrong way.
Yeah.
But even this DOJ couldn't figure out a way to charge Matt Gaetz.
Right. So Matt Gaetz gets appointed Attorney General. All these people freak out about it, I guess including the DOJ, because they know what he's going to do when he gets into there. They already had the shredders outside of the Department of Justice, the shredder trucks outside the Department of Justice. So then we have a situation where the House Ethics Committee then says, we're not going to release this report because our conclusion was already there. We're not going to release the working parts of the report. So what happens? 2 hours later, the documents relating to his payments to women are released to the New York Times.
Of course.
And the New York Times prints them. And, of course, at that point then, to my point about the parallel track of justice, we've got a bunch of people in the Justice Department, and the law enforcement people, everybody else, not pressing charges, but then the working parts of those investigations are released to the media and the critics, and they hold their own trial and their own convictions and everything else, and that just is not a tolerable thing, and I have no doubt that's what kicked in the withdrawal. You think?
I would imagine so. And isn't it amazing that we still don't have the transcripts from Joe Biden's god-awful interview with the special prosecutor that led the special prosecutor to basically make a legal conclusion that Joe Biden has no business being in the White House, right? So we still don't have that.
Yeah.
But the minute Matt Gaetz is uttered in the same breath as the words Attorney General, then the floodgates open and everything's released on him. After the DOJ has essentially said we're not going to proceed. The DOJ, the Merrick Garland DOJ, which has indicted every ham sandwich that Donald Trump has ever been near, has decided they're not going to go and get. My argument is the proof against Matt Gaetz must not have been there at all, not even a shred of it. Otherwise, Merrick Garland would have proceeded against him. So now the court of public opinion, as you said, Jamie, they're going to try to try him in that. My whole wonder is all this. We know Donald Trump is as much as the left doesn't want to admit it. Donald Trump, the author and the practitioner of the art of the deal, who plays four-dimensional chess with everything else he does. Maybe Donald Trump played and gamed this all out and knew that they were going to try to take Matt Gaetz down one way or the other, so he was going to provide Matt Gaetz an exit ramp. So by resigning from Congress, that cuts off the technical release of the information, and then Donald Trump probably knows there was going to be a leak, and so then they've got Plan B set up for Matt Gaetz. I'm just wondering if Donald Trump was simply trying to do a favor for his friend Matt Gaetz, who's been a staunch defender of him, get him out of this, get him over to somewhere else, and then Donald Trump puts forward the AG that he intended to do in the first place. I'm just wondering if I think with Donald Trump, you always have to presume there's multiple layers of his thinking here.
My question is, though, why would he go through that? Because with Rubio now Secretary of State, or soon to be, Gaetz could easily be appointed the next U.S. Senator from Florida.
Could be.
And DeSantis might even do that. So why would President Trump go through all the trouble knowing that the chances of Gaetz getting confirmed were like 30%? If he knew there was going to be a leak especially, why did he Why would he go through all that? I'm trying to figure that out.
I know. We don't know what we don't know here, right? Doesn't it seem like this all kind of followed the trajectory, though, of what we would expect to have happen in a way, and that Donald Trump knew all this was going to happen, but maybe it's for Gates's benefit ultimately, that ultimately Gates comes out better in some way than being maligned and smeared by the full report being published, which some Republicans wanted to issue against him as well.
Yes.
Because you still have the ghost of Kevin McCarthy kicking around up on Capitol Hill.
Well, and now that the document was released about these payments and everything, that becomes then fodder for the questions during the hearing, even though they would have already probably had that anyway. But still, you're wondering, and I'm thinking to myself, too, in the end, this actually, oddly enough, I think, puts Gates in a better position than he maybe would have been before to be the next U.S. Senator from Florida.
Or other things. There's other possibilities for him to that he could participate either in a role from Florida or maybe even with this White House that don't require Senate confirmation. And I want to remind the audience, payments by rich and powerful people that are maligned and hated by their enemies, payments to other individuals prove absolutely nothing.
Always.
They're made every single day in this country because certain people want to get money for doing absolutely nothing other than defaming other individuals.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so do you think that DeSantis would appoint Gates as the next U.S. Senator?
Florida politics are extremely complicated, probably only outdone by Texas politics.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I don't know necessarily the camps in Florida, like who's on whose side. I know a little bit more about Texas. You got the Paxton crew, and then Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, who I really like a lot, and he was dragged through the mud.
Yep, and exonerated.
And then you got the Abbott crew and the Bushies, down there.
Right.
And it's kind of a 30-sided dice. I don't know as much on Florida. There's a lot of people that are going to line up for that Senate seat. Laura Trump has been mentioned as well. And let's remember this too, Jamie. Ron DeSantis is termed out. There's going to be a governor's race in Florida in a couple of years.
Yeah, right.
As well.
Right. Interesting. So, again, back to the way this has been operating. And I noticed, too, that there's a same kind of parallel justice universe for Pete Hegseth. So, most recently, even today, he responded to it, to these sexual assault allegations that police investigated and found no grounding of it. And yet the news media now has decided that's not enough. They're going to have their own trial or their own investigation of Pete Hegseth, even though the authorities had already exonerated him. So there's your other parallel justice universe. We could probably name a million different ways that we see that.
Well, and 60 Minutes already had their Pete Hegseth expose last week, so that should be the end of the story, right?
Right.
It's ridiculous. And, maybe Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz knew that Matt Gaetz' nomination for Attorney General was going to be so cataclysmic for D.C. to get their hands around. In a way, it kind of makes everything else pale in comparison. So now Donald Trump can say, hey, look, okay, we did this, didn't quite work. Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his nomination. Now just approve all my other freaking nominees. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? Because honestly, everything I've heard about Pete Hegseth that they're trying to throw at him is really ridiculous. They don't like his tattoo.
Right.
They don't like the cross tattoo.
The Jerusalem cross.
Which is actually a Jerusalem cross, not a Nazi cross. You freaking Philistines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just because white supremacists or a few goofballs happen to use it for their own little logo or whatever, doesn't make it white supremacists.
Everything with right angles is not a Nazi symbol.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that one theory you pose, which I think is a good one, is that this roughest part is what ultimately might clear the way for all the other ones.
I'll go back to what I told you last week. It's advise and consent, not advise and obstruct. So let the Senate advise, but then they should consent, right?
Yes.
That's the second part. It's not advise and refuse unless someone is absolutely, completely and utterly terrible. And I'm not saying Matt Gaetz was. He voluntarily withdrew. I would have been fine with him being Attorney General. I would have celebrated that every day. I would have been looking forward to that. I would have been getting popcorn every night because we need to reset the apple cart of the proper system and scales of justice in this country because as you pointed out, and as we've talked about for the last 40 years at least, and going back to Barack Obama, the previous 8, we are really out of whack in this country with the two tiers of justice. There's one system for the haves and there's one for the have-nots. You can call them the ruling class, the elites, and the rest of us out here in flyover country, out here in the districts.
Yeah, I mean, just today with the breaking news about Jussie Smollett, and the Illinois Supreme Court vacating his sentence, but the reality is that didn't exonerate him of his guilt. So, still, and now we have. It's hard to believe because you don't hear from Susan Collins for years, and until, of course, then it's Trump world again,
right? And
there's Susan Collins again, and this time she's calling for this widespread investigation of RFK Jr. And as HHS, and here's the thing: she was the one who voted. She was the deciding vote for the Biden secretary. I can't remember his name now, who was compromised to no end, but now here she is back, and so suddenly after all this work and after all the work Donald Trump did to win this consequential election, and he did it without Susan Collins, by the way, as we pointed out numerous times, now she's suddenly the star of the show.
Isn't it amazing how even with a name like Kennedy and a Democratic bastion of a family, if you don't toe the party line, or if you don't toe the uniparty line in every which way but loose in Washington, D.C., you become a pariah, right?
Yeah.
So RFK Jr. is kind of the opposite of Matt Gaetz, right? Like Matt Gaetz, known as a hardcore, hard-charging, flame-throwing conservative, RFK's not that, but he's not apparently the right kind of Democrat. This is not the right kind of bipartisanship.
Right.
Because he doesn't see. So, because RFK is daring to take on big so which of the special interests is this bothering Susan Collins with? Is it big pharma, right? Is it big fast food? Is it big Slurpee? I mean, which of the bigs is bothering Susan Collins that she can't support RFK's mission to make America healthy again? When you look at RFK's main platform, and I don't stop this. Why can't we live by the Reagan axiom here? If I agree with somebody, 80% of the time, then on a singular issue, then let's move on. And I may not agree with RFK's position on pro-life versus abortion, but his main job is going to be to fixing our healthcare system as far as what living, breathing humans are doing. And the amount of crap that Americans put in their bodies is unbelievable. We're putting dangerous chemicals into our bodies every day, and we hardly even know it. Yeah, and that's what he wants to fix.
Yes, and Susan Collins has a strange tendency to agree with Democrats a lot. So
you would think she would agree with RFK.
She voted to approve Merrick Garland,
right,
as Attorney General. She voted to approve Biden's last HHS secretary. And so again, she loves this idea of bipartisanship, as you point out. But then when a Democrat comes in to a Trump administration, suddenly she's even angered about that, but it's all about Trump because she's Trump derangement syndrome times 10.
RFK and Tulsi Gabbard are not uniparty Democrats, so therefore they don't count.
And we did get this question quite a bit about RFK Jr. In fact, I was on your show on Friday when you were out, or traveling, and then I stepped in for about 5 minutes with Christopher Arps, and he did ask me about the abortion question regarding RFK Jr. And my answer was, it doesn't matter what his opinion is about abortion. It should not matter at all any opinions about anybody in the Trump administration now about abortion or even Trump's opinion about abortion, because we already won that contest regarding Roe versus Wade. It's back to the states now.
Yes.
And so a federal politician or a federal cabinet member, their position on abortion is irrelevant and actually should be in the perfect world, because we don't have to worry about that at the federal level anymore.
That's exactly correct. Republican presidents for the last 50 years talked about dismantling Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump did it.
Yes.
Republican presidents talked about putting the right kinds of justices on the Supreme Court to do just that. Donald Trump was actually the one who did it.
Right.
RFK Jr. now has nothing to do with that discussion. And if you want to worry about federal funding, Well, that's a job for Congress. Congress's job will be to make sure that there's no taxpayer funding of any abortion-related measures. RFK should have nothing to do with this. So haven't we talked about for decades that we want the federal government to do federal government things and the state governments to do state government things? Now that we're in that world, Jamie, it's like dog catches car. Nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing you could possibly say that would be relevant about his position on abortion would be, let's say, if some abortion pill or some other pharmaceutical came down the line, and of course he'd be overseeing the FDA and all that kind of stuff. And so, but even that I don't think is a relevant thing. But this Susan Collins thing drives me nuts because these people have been a thorn in Trump's side before, and now are going to be a thorn in Trump's side again. And the people of the United States of America, I guarantee you, the millions of people who voted for Donald Trump, Gates withdraws, they're like, ho-hum. We some of us didn't even know who he was. You know, I guarantee you, this brand new coalition of minority voters and all these people who came out of the woodwork for Donald Trump outside of the Republican Party don't even know who Matt Gaetz is and don't really necessarily even care. This was all focused on Donald Trump and his policies. And so, yeah, a lot of this is inside baseball for a lot of people. But the good news is most of Americans, they do not care about this withdrawal. It's not a kink in Trump's armor, and it doesn't matter to them one way or the other. And they just want to see President Trump succeed. But the one thing that does make people angry, I think, just viscerally and as human beings and as citizens, is this parallel justice. And people know when things are unfair. People know when you're starting to try people in the media, when the enemies of Trump are going to hold their own court, and that's when people start to realize, because they had the same feeling for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is indicted all these times. He has a mugshot taken of him and everything else, and everybody knows in their human brain that all is really unfair.
And all the Republicans spoke up against this for the last 4 years. So while you're out of power, you're all tough guy and tough girl and you speak against it. And the minute you get power back, you're not sure if you want to get your hands dirty. I would ask Susan Collins and all the other squishes, I'd love to sit them down and ask them, okay, now that Donald Trump defied all expectations, had the greatest political comeback in all history, all U.S. history, despite everything in the kitchen sink being thrown at him, what would you have his Department of Justice do now? Do you not think that the apple cart needs to be righted? I'm not talking about unfairly persecuting your political opponents like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did, but don't we need to make sure we protect parents? Shouldn't people be able to go to their school boards again and their city councils without fear of censorship, retribution, and being threatened with jail time? Shouldn't pro-life protesters be able to stand on street corners and quietly and silently, patriotically and peacefully protest without being threatened with the censorship police like they're doing in the UK? Susan Collins, what would you have the Trump Department of Justice do? What kind of person do you want there? Do you want someone who's just going to sit there like a potted plant? Or do you actually want justice to be returned to the American people as we truly make America great again?
Well, I'll take the potted plant vision of Susan Collins, because that's
probably what she would rather
too.
have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, buddy,
all talk, no walk.
I appreciate you. Oh, one quick thing before we have a minute left here. Who do you think could be the next nominee for Attorney General?
You know, Missouri's Andrew Bailey keeps coming up. And I think that's pretty wild. And I think there's a lot of other good potential folks. Donald Trump has a lot of wonderful attorneys around him that have served him ably and well over the last 4 years. I think any of them would do a fantastic job.
Will Scharf is out there, too. He's already gotten a position in the Trump administration, but you never know.
He'd take a promotion.
I mean, and he was a bulldog of a lawyer for Donald Trump. So we'll see how that goes. I do know I don't want Trey Gowdy.
No.
Let's
take a pass on that.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Little Sharp would make them all pee their pants.
All right, on. That is Tim Jones, and of course, Tim Jones, the one half of the Tim Jones and Christopher Arp show here on News Talk STL from 4 to 6. Great show, buddy, and great to see you too.
Thanks, Jamie.
This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday evening to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. I wanted to give you one more little snippet of the moxie of Congresswoman Nancy Mace. So she does this whole transgender bathroom thing, and guess who comes out of the woodwork again? Good old crybaby pansy Adam Kinzinger. And he decides he's going to kind of retweet this tweet that Nancy Mace set out a while back. This is in March of 2021, where she said, "I strongly support LGBTQ rights. No one should be discriminated against." I guess basically insinuating somehow that her desire to keep biological men out of women's bathrooms is somehow is somehow discrimination, which it is not. And I think that even most reasonable LGBTQ community members will say that as well. That's not discrimination, trying to keep biological men out of women's bathrooms. But Adam Kinzinger apparently thinks this does. So what he does is he puts out this tweet. He says, "Hey, at Nancy Mace," and he decides he's going to retweet her tweet from that time, LGBTQ. So she gets back to him and says, "It's okay, Adam. Even though you don't have balls anymore, you can still use the men's room." Outstanding. Love this woman, and she's a soundbite and Twitter bite machine, and I absolutely love it. On a more serious note, you guys remember, and I covered this exhaustively, I am close with Ashley Babbitt's husband, Aaron, and mom, and she's still in D.C. It's just unbelievable what's going on up there near the gulag, but things are changing rapidly. And so I'm very close with the family. I covered the story. You all know that I did the documentary called Portrait of a Patriot, and that involved both Aaron and, of course, Ashley Babbitt's mom, Mickey. And it's still available out there on the internet. It was kind of scrubbed from YouTube, but it was a whole story about her life. So it wasn't long after she was murdered. She, of course, was murdered on January 6th. And then by March or late March, I was in San Diego interviewing Aaron Babbitt and interviewing Mickey. And it was really quite a documentary. It was really, I think, pretty good, if I do say so myself, and told the story of Ashley Babbitt and what a wonderful person she was, what a patriot she was, and how voraciously she supported Donald Trump. And, of course, you know, this backstory on all this is that I think that we came to the conclusion after some investigations and things like that, that Ashley Babbitt had no idea that she was going to wind up mixed up in the U.S. Capitol, mixed up with a bunch of people causing violence, most of them Antifa. They weren't even Trump supporters. And then she wound up trying to escape the mire. It was chaos in that part of the Capitol. And in that escape, she was shot to death by Michael Byrd, this hack Capitol police officer and scumbag. And she was shot without warning, and I think she was trying to get away. That's Aaron and I's conclusion, we believe, that she was just trying to get out of there. And there was no way down the steps because some police officers were there, and it was just chaotic, and I think she was just trying to get out because they were banging on the door and the glass and everything else, and she was shot to death. And then her body didn't get any medical attention. They took her down the steps upside down, and it was terrible. It was a terrible day in American history. Even though other people think it was an insurrection and a terrible day in American history. No, it was not. But it was a terrible day in history because our U.S. government executed a patriot named Ashley Babbitt. Now it turns out that this cop who shot her after a subcommittee investigation, we're just now getting information from Just the News on this. He had a lengthy disciplinary record that included gun incidents. And of course, as you know, the family is suing the Capitol Police and the United States government, and this will play heavily into that lawsuit because ultimately he was promoted after he murdered Ashley Babbitt. He's a murderer in the Capitol Police and was promoted to captain. So this report coming out of this House subcommittee, and this is the House Administration Oversight Committee investigation into the Capitol Police disciplinary process. It turns out that Michael Byrd had a disciplinary record that included firearms-related incidents and internal affairs investigations. In other words, he's a bad, crappy cop. That's what he was. The one who wound up murdering Ashley Babbitt. He's a scumbag, bad, crappy cop. The issues in Captain Michael Byrd's background included a failed shotgun qualifications test, a failed FBI background check for a weapons purchase, a 33-day suspension for a lost weapon. That was the one that he left in the bathroom of the Capitol. This idiot. And referral to Maryland state prosecutors for firing his gun at a stolen car fleeing his neighborhood. This is according to congressional and police documents obtained by Just the News, which is a really good outfit, by the way. Byrd's record was uncovered during this larger House subcommittee investigation. And then at this point, all of the chronicling of this and everything else was sent to the department's chief, Thomas Manger, in which the lawmakers expressed concern about the officer's promotion to captain. So right after he murdered Ashley Babbitt, Michael Byrd was promoted to captain in the Capitol Police Department. And this in spite of many of these known disciplinary measures. And this is the quotation from the subcommittee. This subcommittee is dedicated to ensuring the United States Capitol Police has autonomy from political pressures so it can make operational and personnel decisions. However, based on the information obtained by the subcommittee regarding the handling of Captain Byrd following the January 6, 2021, and his significant disciplinary history, I have concerns about the United States Capitol Police's decision to promote him to the rank of captain. And in his only interview to date, Byrd did that interview with Lester Holt, defended his decisions that he made that day, and he said, I believe I showed utmost courage on January 6th, and it's time for me to do that now when he came forward publicly. So ultimately, this is a scam job and ought to ultimately result in some kind of reorganization or at the very least reassessment of the Capitol Police's autonomy. You have to understand that some of these officers working for the Capitol Police are rogues like Michael Byrd, and they are beyond any kind of questioning. So you don't they are beyond any kind of separate disciplinary activity by even the Department of Justice. They're that autonomous. They are like the Congress's personal police force, which is why, in my opinion, you got a lot of Congress people, even after the situation regarding Ashley Babbitt and her murder, why many Congress people didn't speak up about what happened. Because keep in mind, these people, and I'm not defending them or even justifying what they did in their silence, but the reality is with an autonomous type of police force, that is tasked with protecting you, the last thing I guess some of these people wanted to do is piss off the police force because they're unaccountable to anybody. They're unaccountable to anybody. Indeed, even this House subcommittee, in expressing its concerns, can't actually do anything about it. They can't impose or fire or do whatever. I think that is all going to change with the brand new Trump administration. Now, keep in mind, this incident involving the Byrd shooting at a fleeing car in his neighborhood is probably a pretty good and really obvious indication of this guy's ineptitude and carelessness and recklessness. Because you all know that's not even anything a police officer or certainly a private citizen can do. And certainly not an off-duty police officer. I mean, we all know, hopefully you know, as gun owners, we are focused on discipline and the laws and of proper gun ownership. And for instance, we know that if you see somebody breaking into your car outside of your house, you can't shoot them. You can't even shoot at them. And that's just the way things are in terms of discharging a weapon and doing all that kind of thing. Well, Byrd decided he was going to try to halt the car theft while he was off duty, brandished his gun, fired 2 shots at the vehicle in the middle of a suburban neighborhood. And this was a Capitol Police Internal Affairs report. So this was in 2004. So they investigated him. They knew what Captain Byrd's, what Michael Byrd's record was. They knew that he left a gun in the bathroom of the Capitol. They knew that he failed an FBI background in trying to purchase a weapon. This guy was reckless as the day is long. And I don't know whether it's because he was black that he just got kind of short shrift and patted on the head and was able to do all this kind of stuff, or whether this really is a mechanism of the lack of accountability of the U.S. Capitol Police. Well, yeah, we know we have this crap bag working for us, but who's going to know? And who knows whether Michael Byrd even had any kind of information on some of the other Capitol Police officers. It seems to me, as a result of January 6th, we found a police force operating at the federal level as basically a rogue police force with a bunch of crap bags employed by it, including Michael Byrd. I'm sure there are other good police officers out there within the Capitol Police. I don't want to malign every single one of them. Byrd claimed after this incident that he fired his weapon at the oncoming vehicle as it tried to strike him. But when the vehicle was found, officers located 1 bullet in the rear of the vehicle that entered from behind, basically meaning that Byrd lied about why he shot at the car. So Byrd not only is a crap bag, bad shot murderer and ne'er-do-well, he's also a liar. And he's the one who murdered Patriot Ashley Babbitt. Byrd exhibited bad judgment, according to the detective who worked the case. And basically, this guy had a long record of disciplinary problems and everything else, and he wound up murdering Ashley Babbitt and received no accountability for his actions whatsoever, and was indeed promoted to captain because apparently he had a Trump supporter's scalp, which in my opinion, I'm taking the worst possible look at it, but that's how I feel about that in the Capitol Police. But at some point, the autonomous nature of the Capitol Police must be reassessed. These people were operating in the shadows, and this is a damning report. And what ultimately is going to happen, I hope this happens, is that this House Oversight Committee conclusion about how bad of a crap bag Michael Byrd is should play into a successful outcome for this lawsuit against the Capitol Police and the federal government. Because this will all come out in that lawsuit. And so the one thing we can be happy about is that this new information is presenting a possible really good payback for Mickey and Aaron, Ashley Babbitt's family. Of course, in the end, as you know, with Aaron and Mickey, and you've heard from them before and talked to them, I have reached out to Aaron in the past and Mickey. Because this lawsuit has been filed, they're pretty much kind of under a situation where they're not able to talk a whole lot about it. And I totally understand that. You know, you file a lawsuit, at that point, you kind of batten down the hatches so things that you say on a radio station or whatever are not ultimately used against you and can harm your case. So they won't be able to talk about this, but this will play into that. In the end, though, as you know from Aaron and Mickey, the reality is no amount of money is going to bring Ashley Babbitt back to them. No amount of money is going to change the damage done to this family. No amount of money is going to assuage the crime that was committed against Ashley Babbitt. And so, yeah, they'll win a big payoff, whatever. But, you know, that's just nothing that is consequential in the larger picture about the tragedy that was totally avoidable and the murder that was totally avoidable. And this is not acceptable. And this is, and the good news is, with the Trump administration in, we're going to see a whole lot of things done about these J6 prisoners that are still there. A couple of them have been released or whatever, but they're still in the gulag. But with Trump as president again, I believe things are going to change. I hope it is one of his priorities to make sure that something is done. And I am very, very happy about this new information coming out, because now we're going to get to a further point where you have these guys dead to rights. All right, I hope you are planning your weekend at Johnny's Hideout. Rick Pogue was on the air with me yesterday, and what a great guy, what a great place. And they've got 40 different TVs for you to go and watch the NFL football games and the college games. It is, after all, a sports bar. That's what they want it identified as. But they also have great music there that you're going to love, and bands playing all weekend long, and they've got the fire pits out there and the fire, so it keeps you warm when you're outside, and inside it's cozy and warm. The food is great. Their chicken wings, a cold beer, and, of course, great drinks, and the brand new pizzas, and just excellent food. And it really is a beautiful creation. Johnny's Hideout. You can check it out on Facebook. It is right in High Ridge, 10 minutes south of 270. So it's really super easy to get to. So check it out on the web. It's jhideout.com or Johnny's Hideout on Facebook. This is the Allman Report.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone. It's Common Sense Radio. The Allman Report here on NewsTalkSTL, 101.9, 94.1. Jamie Allman, pleased and privileged to be with you. All right. So, Ethan, you're kind of like my, well, I don't know. I wouldn't. You're an expert on a number of things, but you're kind of like my fast food go-to guy when I want to talk about fast food, right?
Well, okay, look, I got a McDonald's cup next to me, so
Oh, yeah, you do?
I cannot deny.
I didn't know that. It's a what is it, like a iced tea or something?
Nah, just a Coke.
Oh, okay. So, did you go to McDonald's today?
Yeah.
I mean, to eat, or you just get to get a Coke?
No, I ate,
Okay.
just the standard triple.
Standard stuff, yeah, standard triple. So, do you ever go to Chick-fil-A?
Pretty often, too, yeah.
Oh, yeah, good, okay. So my girls, I mean, they love Chick-fil-A. They kind of have, since they've gotten a little older, like they went through a period of like 2 years where it was just all Chick-fil-A all of the time. I mean, it was never-ending Chick-fil-A. Spent a lot of money there every week. And I love Chick-fil-A's business model, which is everything is like super fast. I still don't know how they do it.
It is crazy, man.
I mean,
There's
it's
nothing
incredible.
like it. Yeah, Yeah, you get up to the window, you're out of there.
Yeah. So now they've graduated a little more. Now that, like, for instance, now that Natalie is driving and stuff, they'll go to Cane's sometimes, or they'll go to Panda Express, or places like that. But Chick-fil-A they don't get that as much as they used to. But Chick-fil-A is a great company, and of course, at one point down the line, I think a long time ago, the Chick-fil-A company had some opinion about gay marriage or something. It's like it wasn't even very consequential. I think they donated some money to some politicians or something who opposed gay marriage or whatever. They're closed on Sundays. They got that vibe going for them. They're a Christian-oriented company, and they take really super good care of their employees. Their employees are happy. It's rare that you get like a bitchy Chick-fil-A employee or somebody who looks like they're not having fun.
It's pleasant there. I agree.
I mean, occasionally when it's cold, and there's in those booths, they don't like it. And one time I did get yelled at by a Chick-fil-A person when I tried to switch a lane. This was like on Manchester, so I tried to switch a lane or something, and she got all pissy about it. But because it was the one lane was moving faster than the other, so I thought, well, I'm just going to go around this thing and switch, and I couldn't switch lanes.
Well, it's funny because you have to pick your lane before you know what they're what they're going to be like, because you pick way ahead of time with those pylons or whatever.
Yeah, right. And so I kind of went around. I was going to go around the pylon, and she got all. I don't blame her, but whatever. I didn't get into a fight with her or anything. So anyway, now it turns out that there are still some people left over who just won't eat Chick-fil-A or are offended by Chick-fil-A. So this happened in Duluth, Minnesota. A hospital in Duluth, Minnesota, apologizing to their employees for serving them free Chick-fil-A. And called the employees who complained about the free Chick-fil-A courageous for speaking out against the chicken sandwiches. And this is just unbelievable that this hospital did this. So Essential Health in Duluth wrote to staff after the staff clucked about the free sandwiches available. I'm reading from this news article, but it's pretty funny. In the St. Mary's Medical Center's atrium earlier that day. So what the hospital did was they got a bunch of Chick-fil-A. And by the way, when it comes to feeding your employees and doing stuff like that, Chick-fil-A is probably the easiest to kind of get mass purchases of food done quickly. You can order it, drop by there in the morning, pick it all up, the Chick-fil-A morning sandwiches, whatever it happens to be. It's a lot easier than just bringing a bunch of McDonald's, and sometimes it can even be cheaper. So Chick-fil-A actually is a company, is a brand that a lot of people use to feed people in mass. You've seen like a bunch of Chick-fil-A sandwiches at, like things that people have that are festivals or whatever, and they always have the Chick-fil-A sandwiches there. But here's what they said. We've received feedback from some colleagues who were concerned or offended by this occurrence, and we value colleagues feeling comfortable expressing their reservations. We would like to thank our colleagues who had the courage to speak up, to widen our lens of inclusivity. And we appreciate all colleagues continuing to live our values of respect and justice. So keep in mind, there are a bunch of people in the LGBT community who have boycotted and protested the company, donating to groups like the Salvation Army, which activists claim has a record of anti-LGBTQ discrimination. Anyway, the Chick-fil-A always says it values diversity, and you could see that in their employees. You can go to any Chick-fil-A and see a huge diversity of employees and everything else. But this is just another example of a situation where no one is, especially in the left, can ever be happy. And they're always bitching about something. They're always stereotyping and maligning. They're the most intolerant group of people on the planet, the left is. And also really good at stereotyping as well. They're bigots. And the reality is they don't even know it. And because the company has dared to actually get involved in public discourse, they find that intolerable. And of course, normally, like as a grown-up person, if you don't happen to align, of course, I can't imagine like having anything that company-wise that I'm trying to think, like what would if something was in front of me, I can't think of anything I wouldn't ingest because I don't like the company's values or whatever. I'm trying to think of what that is. Hell, I mean, I never had Bud Light, never really liked Bud Light, but I didn't support the boycott of Bud Light. So if Bud Light was in front of me and it was the only beer around, hell yes, I'd drink it. Of course, you know me. I don't pass up alcohol very often in any form. So, but there's not really any company. I'm trying to think of like what. I mean, there are certain things that I choose not to buy, or I choose not to participate in, like Nike or some of these other brands that I feel are a bunch of woke left-wing nutsoids. So there are some things that I just don't purchase, but I don't boycott them or protest them. I just choose not to consume them. Not much food, though, and I can't really remember. I can't because I don't keep up with that kind of stuff. You guys might be able to say some things that you don't eat or whatever. I get it. But like if like a grown-up person, if free food came in and it was Chick-fil-A or whatever, and you had that passion, most normal people would just not eat it. Like I don't want to take free stuff from a company that doesn't share my values. Instead of like emailing the company, can you imagine doing something like that? These friggin' babies. But they're all pissed, because of the election. They're taking on Joy Behar's new worldview.
What's in the air, Whoopi? What's Trumpism. We lost the election. Wait a minute. We lost the election. We're miserable. Half of this country is miserable. And let's just tell the truth. We hate that he won. We hate it.
Yeah.
And everybody's uptight and crazy right now.
And only the left actually would clap in unison all together at being miserable. Yeah, we're miserable. Yeah. I mean, who the hell does that? That place is unbelievable. I mean, where are the long-range missiles for that studio? They're flying them all over to Russia. Why not save one for the studios of the... Okay, no, I'm not advocating for the killing of the View people. It's a joke. That's what that is. All right, coming up, speaking of jokes, Oh, Lordy. So Nikki Haley has her knives out again. Yes, she does. She's back. And, ooh, is she angry about Tulsi Gabbard. So it's a cat fight. And Nikki Haley is going off the ledge in jealous rage at Tulsi Gabbard. And by listening to her on the other side of this, you will then know the true bullet we all dodged when Nikki Haley was not accepted for any role in the Trump administration. I'll have that for you. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Oh, poor Nikki Haley. Oh, Lordy. I'm Nikki Haley. I'm so... Why does my heart feel so bad? Why does it feel so bad, Nikki?
Why does my heart...
Oh, Nikki Haley.
feel so bad?
You guys are all...
Why does my soul...
Some people make fun of you for playing Moby. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL, 101.9, 94.1. Are you one of those people who make fun of people when they play Moby?
I don't know who Moby is.
Oh, okay, good.
I guess this is Moby.
Yeah. I think your dad would make fun of me for playing
yeah,
Moby.
he would. I can tell.
Because Moby is... He's probably a liberal, too. I don't know. But Moby is kind of like... I don't know how he got such a reputation as being douchey or whatever. I never use that word because I can't stand it, but I guess I'm just pulling that out of there. Because most people I know who use that word are exactly douches. So I hate that word, but nonetheless. But for some reason he got this reputation as kind of being like, really, Moby? So I don't know how that came about or what it is. And if any of you could explain it on the feed, that'd be great. It's kind of like I never knew like what the problem everybody had with Nickelback was. Like Nickelback would play and everybody got made fun of Nickelback. I still don't understand how that happened. Do you know about that?
Man, I can't figure that one out either. I guess I always guessed it had something to do with his voice. He puts on that really annoying. Yeah. It's just weird, you know. But I secretly like some Nickelback. So what can I say? You know.
Photograph song and all that stuff.
There you go. Yeah, the lyrics are kind of good on Photograph.
Well, you know, I've been to a Nickelback concert. I went to one out at the amphitheater out there. And I think they were opening for somebody, or maybe I actually just went to the concert or something. And everybody at the concert knew every single word of every single song. Like they were singing. So this whole idea that Nickelback is somehow uncool, it's crazy because I guess there's some people who think it's uncool. But then on the other side, the people who love Nickelback, like love them like crazy.
Well, you know, it's a weird thing. How does a band get a reputation so bad while making the most money?
Yes.
I mean,
and making so many people so happy because they're singing the song. So it's really, I think sometimes it's kind of like our herd mentality, you know, when people are like, yeah, man, they're uncool. You're like, yeah, they're uncool. But you don't really know why.
Absolutely.
And because you're around a bunch of people who think that Moby's uncool or Nickelback's uncool, you don't actually admit, I don't know, I kind of like Moby's songs. You do? Yeah. Bleh. Moby, really? It's kind of like that. And there's no reason for it. But anyway, I was impressed when I went to the Nickelback concert. I was like, damn, people love these guys. How did they engender such contempt from so many people and yet have this kind of love from so many people?
Are they still touring? Do they go?
I think they are. I mean, last time I saw them was like 5 years.
I bet you people like them now. I bet you their reputation as a joke has tapered off.
Yeah.
And people are more nostalgic now where they're like, man, why is the world not like that anymore? I bet you people like Nickelback again.
Well, they're Canadian, which I guess is another thing. I don't know. I remember when Ted Cruz, I can't remember what happened, when he was running for president, there were people with signs outside some of his rallies that said Ted Cruz loves Nickelback to try to criticize him.
Hey, that would make me like Ted Cruz more. So what can I say?
I have no idea.
I guess that's what they wanted to.
All right, so Nikki Haley. Oh man, Nikki Haley's annoying. She was so annoying. I did take, I went to the Iowa caucuses. I took Natalie with me, and we had a really good time at the Iowa caucuses. And I took her to a Nikki Haley rally, took her to a Vivek Ramaswamy rally, and took her to a Trump rally there, and the Trump victory party. Ultimately, we were at. That was really cool for her. She wasn't very impressed with Nikki Haley, and the people who attended the Nikki Haley rally were about what you'd expect as your typical, kind of Republicans who like Nikki Haley. You're like, I couldn't tell you what the vibe was, but it was like, oh, this is because unfortunately they really didn't like Trump, and therefore I didn't really like them. It'd be different if you just loved Nikki Haley and kept your mouth shut about Trump, but neither Nikki Haley nor her supporters could keep their mouths shut about Trump. And I understand these primary season things, you get all kinds of things going on. But anyway, Nikki Haley saw her speech. She seems to be a nice enough person personally and everything else. And But she's annoying because she played that whole game about, when you criticize me, you're sexist or whatever, and it just played that game. But she just was not very pleasant and said some really rough things about Donald Trump. And this wasn't a situation where you had H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan type of situations where, the worst it got was that H.W. Bush called Ronald Reagan's economic policies voodoo economics. That's as bad as it got. And he wound up being the vice president. There were some people saying, hey, Nikki Haley needs to be your vice president because you have to bring the Republican Party together. And of course, I never advocated for that. I gave it a little bit of attention, like, I don't know, maybe that would work out, but I don't know. But eventually, as the campaign went on, it became clear that we wouldn't need the Nikki Haley supporters and we wouldn't need these snobby, pearl-clutching Republicans to win the election. It became very apparent that Nikki Haley and her group of pearl-clutching, snobby Republicans were a group of people who were ultimately going to be a group of people without a home, neither in the Republican Party nor in Trump world. And so eventually we saw the huge coalition built by Trump and Vance and the gigantic amount of individuals in minority communities, suburban women, Hispanics, blacks, you name it, who love Donald Trump, who normally and maybe didn't even vote for him in 2020 or certainly not 2016, who are voting for him this time around. And I've always said, I hate to repeat myself, and I hope you don't mind if I keep repeating myself on this, but I predicted that we could win without Republicans or these kind of mainstream neocon Jeb Bush type Republicans. And I felt we could really, really do that. And we did. And so Nikki Haley is more irrelevant than ever, which is why President Trump didn't feel the need to have her in his administration to kiss up to these Republicans who turn their nose up at him. He didn't feel the need to do that, and I'm glad he didn't. Nikki Haley has a Sirius XM program, Nikki Haley Live, and she decided to use that program to go after Tulsi Gabbard and lie about her. Because Nikki Haley's really super pissed about the fact, and certainly Tulsi Gabbard, in my opinion, is a better woman than Nikki Haley is. And, of course, she's been nominated as the Director of National Intelligence. So here's what Nikki Haley has to say about Tulsi.
Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Now, everybody loves that she is now saying she's a Republican. But I have always said, let's look at what they've said, what their actions are.
Jealousy is what I'm hearing there, aren't you? Tulsi Gabbard. Because she doesn't open her mouth when she talks. She just talks with her teeth clenched like this, and she talks like this a little bit. And she's just, ugh.
DNI, that is the president's top intelligence advisor. It's supposed to fairly represent the views of 18 separate.
It's funny when she does her Sirius program, she's like reading from a script. She's got this script in front of her, and you can tell, right? She's just reading from the whole thing, like she's reading a speech.
These in units.
Nice show.
It has the authority over $100 billion annual U.S. spy budget. $100 billion U.S. annual spy budget, and it holds sway over which secrets we declassify. That's a big deal. This is a job for an honest broker without any pronounced policy biases. So hold that thought for a second.
You need to drink some water, girl, too, because you're like, I can't stand that. I used to, my first job in radio when I was a college student was editing out lip smacks of people's commentaries on Wisconsin Public Radio. It was reel to reel. Take a razor blade. These people would all go in there and I'd have to edit those out so they didn't sound disgusting. That was my first job, dude.
Hey, that's cracking me up. Well, if it were my job to do it, then I'd have to take that out right there.
Yeah, of course. Well, so I had to, because it was reel to reel, and that was when we used tape, reel to reel tape, and we'd use a razor blade and edit out. I'd have to put it, go up, and I'd find it, mark it, cut it, and put it back together and move on.
Sounds kind of maddening.
It was fun, man, because by the time I heard it the next morning, these people sounded perfect. Thanks to my work.
Pride in a job well done.
Exactly. That was fun, man.
What are the facts about Tulsi Gabbard? She opposed ending the Iran nuclear deal. She opposed sanctions on Iran. She opposed designating the Iran military as terrorists who say death to America every single day. She said that Donald Trump turned the U.S. into Saudi Arabia's prostitute. This is going to be the future head of our national intelligence. In Congress, Tulsi criticized Trump's authoritarian strike against Qasem Soleimani. Now, I will remind you, he was considered the master of death in Iran. She said he had no justification whatsoever for killing him. She tried to limit Trump's war powers against Iran. She tried to cut our annual defense budget so that we couldn't punish Iran and hinder their influence. Reminder, Iran is our #1 sponsor of terrorism, and Tulsi Gabbard was defending Iran. She went to Syria in 2017 for a photo op with Bashar al-Assad while he was massacring his own people. She said she was skeptical that he was behind the chemical weapons attacks. Now, this to me is disgusting because, Cheney, you and I were at the United Nations when Assad did those chemical attacks on those children.
Yep.
And you can go back and look at a speech I gave holding up pictures of dead children who had been killed by chemical attacks.
Yep, choked to death.
For her to say that Assad was not behind that, literally everything she said about that were Russian talking points. Every bit of that.
So that's where the Russian agent thing came from with Tulsi Gabbard. And when you listen to Nikki Haley say what she's saying, you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's terrible what Tulsi Gabbard was doing. Now, keep in mind, at that particular juncture, Iran had not turned up the burner in becoming state-sponsored terrorists. She was not in favor of the plane load of millions of dollars that Obama sent. So this will all come out in the hearings, of course. And this thing with Assad, I don't know. My whole feeling is when she talked about Trump being a prostitute for Saudi Arabia, that actually is totally untrue. So let's vet hear this out. And this will come out during the hearings, and there will be questions about it. But I think that Nikki Haley is being way, way over the top in the facts about Tulsi Gabbard's true opinions, and are doing things that pulling out things her as a Democrat who's now a Republican and who has now changed completely around in her point of view. And we should be welcoming people who are completely changed around in their point of view. But we will see. Right now, this looks like a cat fight, but you can be the judge of that. Ethan Valencia, thanks a ton. You guys, thank you so much. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.